And welcome to Have You Got Your Shit Together with me, Caitlin O'Ryan, the podcast that celebrates not having your shit together. On today's episode, we have the delightful Hugh Ross. He is a Scottish actor and director with a wide variety of TV, film and theatre credits. He's known for TV shows such as Outlander, Poirot, Absolutely Fabulous and the Sharpe series. In films, he's appeared in Trainspotting and Bronson, and his theatre credits include leading parts of the National Theatre, the RSC and in the West End, where he received an Olivier nomination for his performance in Passion. As a director, he's worked on The Mousetrap in the West End and J.B. Priestley's The Roundabout, the Park Theatre, before it transferred to New York. I had the pleasure of meeting and working with Hugh on Outlander, where he portrays the role of Archbug, and I now consider him a really beautiful friend. We recorded this episode in his gorgeous flat in Brighton, where I've dog sat for him before. I hope you enjoy the episode and getting to know Hugh a little bit more. Here's Hugh Ross. Hugh Ross.
Hello, Caitlin O'Ryan.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. I'm thrilled to be in Brighton.
Well, I'm thrilled you're in
As
Brighton.
you know, it's one of my favourite places.
I think you're eventually going to be a Brightonian.
I think so.
I think it's written in the stars.
Yeah, I'm going to move into your spare room.
Oh, are you? Okay. Well, you have to get rid of David's sort of painting stuff and everything. But that'll be all right. Mm-hmm. And you have to sleep with Kate, with the dog all the time.
I would happily do that.
Well, she does sleep around.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Last night it was very funny. I went through and on my side of the bed she'd absolutely stretched herself out. So
she is a princess.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can't come in here.
I'll sleep on the sofa then, Kira. That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got a bit of a bond. I've dog sat her before.
I know.
For a week.
I know.
I think she remembers me.
No, it was lovely. It was yesterday when she sat on your knee. That was very unusual.
Yeah. We have a bond.
She obviously felt something.
She sees me as a peer.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hugh, on a scale of shit to together,
yes,
how are you feeling today?
I think it shit together sort of medium, not too bad. Mm-hmm. I woke up actually feeling quite positive. I was looking forward to doing this and talking to you.
Yeah.
And I was thinking what does make me have my shit together, but it is partly because I think my Taurian impulses are to be organised and to have a plan.
So you like it if you have something to do in the day?
I like to know. I'm not very good at looking at, I mean, there's one here.
Yeah.
A list.
Oh, God, yeah.
And I'm very, very list orientated.
Yeah.
And
lists,
the lists. And I go back and the list is still there. And it's got longer. And I've still not dealt with it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so fair to middling.
And because you've had a bit of a busy weekend.
Yes, not particularly busy weekend, but I found this thing of... I love the way that John Bell said, I'm an outlander. But going up to Edinburgh for this flying visit, and it was great because the people were so informed and so nice. 40 of them, I think there were 4 men and 36 women.
So this was a convention that you did?
It wasn't a convention, it was kind of a
gathering.
A gathering,
yeah.
It was an event.
Ah, very nice.
And it was all the people were doing a kind of tour of Scotland, going to all the locations and all that kind of thing. I mean, Outlander has been so good for the Scottish economy.
Hasn't it? Yeah.
And so I went up on Monday on the train because I didn't want to fly and just can't be bothered with Gatwick and all that hanging around and stuff. And that was nice.
It's a long old train, though.
Yeah. But it's a nice journey. I love that. I love that East Coast journey. Yeah, up by Berwick and Tweed is great. And I was quite enjoying my book. And I love reading on the train. I don't know what it is about the forward motion of the train or something. It makes my brain move forward or something.
I think it's something about like being a child or a baby maybe and being in vehicles.
Oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
In the womb-like carriage. Yeah.
Being carried somewhere.
Yeah. And it's all very dependent on who else is around you, of course.
So you went over the convention and then... You came back.
I came back again, yes.
It's strange, isn't it? Well, so it wasn't a convention, it was a gathering. But what I have found with doing those, it's strange to film something and then not have the immediate response from like an audience.
Yes.
Very much, we put this thing out and then 9 months later it will come out on TV and we'll probably be in a different place in our lives with it.
Yeah.
And actually, because it's not as big over here as it is in America.
Yeah.
Where you don't really get the feedback as much.
Yeah,
So when
yeah.
we go to those events, it's quite nice to see how it's affecting people and see what they like. Yeah.
And I mean, it was all, when I was first contracted, Sarah and I were first contracted, we thought had so little to do except be friends with you and old John Tarsi. But that wasn't good for the ego, because you kind of thought, what am I doing here?
Yeah, it's strange,
and
isn't it?
why am I here? Although everybody's terribly nice and all that kind of things, and you sort of thought, I can actually contribute to this, but I'm not being asked to do it.
Yeah.
And then so when Series 7 arrived and there was things to do, it was very empowering.
It's a funny thing with the show because obviously it's based on books.
Yeah.
So we know where our storyline is going in a way that you often don't with other shows.
Yeah.
So it is kind of like having to bide your time a little bit, isn't it? And just hope that storyline lands.
And in fact, on reflection, I mean, what's very clever about them is that they do set up this big canvas of people who go in and out of focus. And like
it's like ensemble cast.
Well, it is really.
Yeah.
And apart from the principals, apart from Kat and Sam, the rest people, you have your feature bit.
Yeah.
And so that's all very weird. So it's been really gratifying to have had really good feedback this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then actually interesting enough because I had a very long wordy scene to do, which had bothered me for ages, and also because I hadn't learned a long wordy scene for a long time. That I'd kind of and it was a stinking. I had to do this on a really wet day and blah 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 blah, and it actually went really well. But I was shitting myself. I kind of thought.
Really?
Yes, I thought. Am I going to be able to get this done? And actually, when I look back on it and I don't like watching myself.
Yeah.
But I think, you really look as if you should absolutely together then.
So
and actually didn't feel as if I had at all.
What was it that you were worried about? Remembering the words? Or
partly the words and partly it was so much exposition. I mean, that's really difficult to act.
Oh, it's really hard.
I mean, to give tons of information.
Yeah.
And that's why I was worried about being really on top of it.
Yeah.
That, I mean, a dialogue scene, you have the feeding, the cues are sort of, you respond to what somebody else is giving you. But, when it's just a kind of big bit of verbiage and information, that's a bit intimidating.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I had that with one of my biggest scenes was the scene where Lizzie tells Katrina about having slept with the twins and stuff. Yes. And I remember, because that was like my 3rd or 4th season, and because I'd always known that this storyline was coming up, I think for years I'd kind of been waiting for it. And then when it finally came, it felt like this thing that was kind of hanging over my head because I wanted so much to do a good job.
I know.
It's like, you've been waiting for it for a while.
Yeah.
And then similarly, it was quite a lot of like explanation.
Yes.
Because it has to be, because so that the audience are aware of what's going on. But it's really
one of the things that astonishes me about the enthusiasm of the punters for the show is that they retain little kind of details from series 4. Yeah. Is vividly still in their mind in Series 7, that they've retained that and are linking it all up.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think they must rewatch it quite a lot.
Yes.
It's like a comfort show for so many people, isn't it?
Well, apparently, various people said to me at the whatever it was, convention stroke event, that in fact Outlander was their saving grace all through lockdown.
Yeah, lots of people have said that.
Yeah.
There's like the new fans who are known as like the lockdown fans as well, because they found it during lockdown.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone was searching for a long series to get the teeth into, wasn't it?
Yeah, quite.
Okay, so what does having your shit together mean to you?
What does it mean to me? It means it's sort of taking a deep breath. And I remember Simon Russell Beale, distinguished actor, saying to me once, and I was saying I was nervous about something. And he said, what you do, Hugh, is you stand in the wings and you say to yourself repeatedly, I'm a big match player. and you Affirmations is what really it is. And I mean, I've done. I was thinking this morning when a couple of times I've been cast in something. Yeah. And thought, and never had my shit together, but had to pretend I had my shit together.
That's a lot of the work, isn't it?
And I immediately think of something, and we're talking 1970-something. Henry VIII in A Man for All Seasons. I was terrible. And every single night was like, please don't let anybody see how terrible I actually think I am in this.
Imposter syndrome.
I know.
Yeah.
And you have to, I mean, acting's a lot about that sometimes, isn't it?
And I bet no one thought you were terrible.
I think that people were sort of, I'm sure, but
They
you
would
never
find the
quite know.
reviews.
The trouble, of course, with our job is that you never quite know.
No, it's so
people
subjective, isn't it?
I know, and I always think the funniest thing, people always say, what do you say when you go round out to somebody's, they see somebody a show, and somebody said, the best thing is, you say, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed your performance.
There's a lot of but I couldn't do that.
Yeah. Quite.
What does that mean?
I know. And I've seen things, but we know what people have invested, and you kind of have to be awfully careful what you say.
It's such a weird thing of like being an actor is so much about seeking validation from other people, but also in these moments it's having to connect with your own, like validating yourself and whether you felt connected to it or not.
Yes.
And that is a journey that I am still going on in trying to not need the validation of other people and to just trust my own.
Yes.
It's very hard because you can't have like a third eye on yourself. And to do that takes you out of it, and therefore it makes the scene bad. It's a very strange thing that you have to really let go into the thing.
And there's nothing better than finding a part in a play and thinking, I feel so much this is me. I feel so comfortable doing this part and loving playing that part. It doesn't happen very often.
Well, I've had it a few times where I've had like a script come through and I'm like, oh my God, a northern girl who like used to be a waiter and like worked in a ping pong bar and like all of these things, and I'm like, me, and then you still don't get the part.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, no.
Literally me.
That's usually in probably not a very well written script. You know what I mean? The kind of that like is a kind of type.
Yeah.
And you can't play a type.
No.
I mean, we want to play people in situations that we recognise, that we can identify with.
Yeah. It's funny what you're talking about with the imposter syndrome aspect of it, because there's a podcast that I listen to, which is an actors podcast called Honest Actors, and he always says that there's that moment where you get the job and you're like elated, and then suddenly you're just like, oh my God, they're going to realise that they've given it to the wrong person.
Yeah.
Or then you're suddenly worrying about whether you can do the job or whether you're good enough to do it. It's a very straight... How do you feel like you've changed with that? Or is that still something that you feel?
Well, I think you always feel, have they made the right decision about this? Although certain things I think you feel, God, I can do this, I really can do this, that you really kind of identify with this, and you think this is going to be fine. Yeah, then you discover it and find it and blah, blah, blah. I think I still always feel anxious.
Yeah. About whether you're good enough.
Yeah. And people often say to me that you always say, I seem very confident, but I don't always feel very confident. Yeah. I don't think anybody does. You know, I mean, I really don't. I mean, I think everybody... And it's also, I mean, I always think, say to young actors, well, the problem is, that Maggie Smith is very disappointed she wasn't Vanessa Redgrave.
It's never enough.
It's never enough. How you think, well, what she got that I haven't got, and all that kind
it's so
of
funny,
thing.
isn't it?
I know.
But also, I guess, if you're going up for a part, as an actor, you want to be slightly intimidated by it, because if you were just constantly getting parts that you knew that you could do,
yes.
then that would be quite unfulfilling, wouldn't it?
But I always think to myself, how do those soap opera people manage to do it year after year after year after year, and sort of becomes them, and it's not actually... It must be great in a way, but I mean, it's not challenging at all.
It's very secure, though, isn't it?
Very simple. That's the thing.
And I think as an actor, there's not much of that.
But I mean, how much does security matter to actors? I mean, I'm not sure that part where we don't feel, as long as you've got enough to pay the rent somehow. Yeah. I think it's much worse now than it used to be in my generation, because there was a kind of route that people took, and there were far fewer actors, and that you went to drama school if you were fortunate enough to get into a good drama school. Then you did rep, and then and then either you was something happened. But it's also arbitrary. It's also without being. I remember being jealous of Tim Pigott-Smith, because Tim Pigott-Smith and I. Do you know who I'm talking about? See, there he is. He was very.
I don't know who he is now. Very well known. I know who Hugh Ross is.
He had a wonderful job in a production of a TV adaptation of something called The Jewel in the Crown. He was very, very good. But he and I got down to the last two to play Laertes with Ian McKellen in Hamlet. Oh, wow. And, 26, 7, 8, something like that. And I remember he got it and I didn't get it. And being jealous of him, and then, without being maudlin about it, but then he dropped dead in a lift in Northampton about 6, 7 years ago or something like that. I think he had a heart attack or something. You sort of think, well, what does it mean? You know, why was I jealous? You know,
Yeah.
I'm still here. You know, and people have forgotten who he is.
Yeah, gosh, it's strange, isn't it? But we do that so much.
I know.
Yeah. I think because you feel like there's not enough space for everyone sometimes, and you have to remind yourself that there is.
Yeah.
To go back to what you were saying about what having your shit together means to you, and you were saying about like the affirmations.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with my friend the other day, and she said that she says to herself every day, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Yes.
Which I think is really lovely.
Yes,
And it's really
yes,
grounding
yes.
because I have such a tendency to like forward worry about once this job ends, what's going to be next?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
who will I become in
Yeah,
5
yeah.
years? Like, you know, being in London, it's that hustle culture and
Yeah.
just feeling like you're in the rat race.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I find that really overwhelming
Yes,
and anxiety provoking. But having something like that just grounds you in the moment.
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
So important, isn't it?
Don't you find London generally overwhelming?
Yeah, I do. And
Yeah.
I've been there for 7 years.
Yeah.
I think that's why I love coming down to Brighton, because someone once said to me that human beings need to be able to see the horizon to be happy.
Yeah.
And in London, you literally can't anywhere.
Yeah.
There'll
Well,
always be a
absolutely.
building obstructing
Yes,
you.
yeah.
But like you come down to Brighton or I go home to Manchester and you just
Yeah.
see the horizon and the space and suddenly you're like, oh wow, it kind of puts things into perspective.
Yeah, my friends, I was telling you, Christian family were down here, couldn't believe that the countryside was so nearby. You know, that they could actually get there on the 22 bus in 5 minutes. You know,
Because even Hampstead Heath, you're obscured by
Yeah, I know.
buildings.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And yes, it's interesting.
So
And
good for the
that's
soul.
partly also that I've had, since Outlander, podcast and Outlander, this huge hankering for Scotland.
Yeah, it's beautiful up there.
Well, it is, and I just think this kind of Glaswegian people particularly are funnier. You know what I mean? The wonderful sense of humour and everything. And just there's a kind of directness about the Scots that I really
There's like
feel.
patter and
Yeah.
I love it. I feel like that about Ireland as well.
Oh, yes.
Someone said it's
Oh, I
because
love Ireland.
it's almost like that gallows humour from having been oppressed for years.
Yeah.
But it is, It's in the culture, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, the thing that the Scots feel that the English patronise them, which I think they do.
For sure.
Often, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my partner was asked when he wanted to join the tennis club, where do you live? Lewis Crescent. Sorry? Lewis Crescent. Oh, it's your accent, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? And you sort of think, oh, it's your accent, I'm sorry, I'm terribly kind of thing. I hate all that.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway. And yes,
Yeah.
I just the everything about Scotland is appealing. The fact that they want to be European, I'm rather keen on.
I know. They've got their politics right up there.
Well, more right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I asked you to think of an object that makes you feel like you've got your shit together.
Well, I've done this thing for years. Years and years and years,
Yeah.
which is keeping a journal. And I come from a family of journal keepers. My father kept a journal, which when he died was very disappointing because it was so unrevealing.
Just the mundane stuff.
Pretty going off for a nice golfing weekend with Charlie, blah, 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 blah. And my sister has scrupulously kept her diary. She often on the phone says, I was just looking back in 1962 and seeing blah, 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 and you think, you know. Why not?
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's going back. Looking at
So
it.
I have, it's a kind of discipline that I do. I mean, I used to, there was a phase I had where I was scrupulously writing it every day or every evening, which has stopped. But I now always say, I'm just going to write in my diary, and now it might be a week or whatever it is. But it's less interesting than it was. And I kept a diary of a difficult production I was in that is actually, then became the director had suggested I keep a journal of it, and I did.
Like off the rehearsal process?
Yeah. I'm surprised I never told you about this, which was very nearly published, actually. And it's still, people still say, oh, I've heard about this journal.
Oh, wow.
I'll send it to you.
Oh, please.
And various people thought it might do my career a lot of damage. And somebody
Spilling too much tea in it.
A publisher not long ago asked to read it again and said to me, leave it to the Theatre Museum. Because it sort of catches a secrecy about what goes on in the rehearsal.
Yeah.
What goes on stays in the rehearsal.
Yeah.
And I suppose it does reveal quite a bit of the process.
Yeah.
And it was quite a traumatic process.
Oh, wow. So when you say, like, you journal, is that like a diary in terms of today I did this and like keep an account of the day? Or because I have some friends who like journal like morning pages and it's like in the morning they'll wake up and they'll write like 3 pages and it's just to like clear their head.
Yes, it's but I mean I always feel relieved and empowered for having done it, even if it's not very revealing or quite sketchily done.
Yeah.
oddly enough, at my great age, David and I are about to write new wills. And I was thinking, what should I do with... I mean, 1978 they start.
Wow.
And they're all lined up in a big line. I think, what do I do with these? And I'm going to ask an author I know who I think might find them relatively interesting, or ask Bin them, if he would like me to bequeath them to.
Oh, wow.
Sounds a bit morbid, but I mean, I just think, no, otherwise...
It's such a strange thing, isn't it? It's like, oh my gosh, who was telling me that there is a museum somewhere in some country where there was like this era of lots of people keeping diaries, and there's somewhere that you can go and it's like this generation of people's diaries because everyone just went through a phase of doing it.
Yeah.
And it's people's life.
Yeah.
And because we write journals and stuff, because I do it as well, but I've never really thought about that, like what happens to them after.
Well, correct.
And that's your entire life and your entire...
But I also say to yourself, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Who's it for?
Well, it's for yourself.
It is for yourself, I think.
Well, I think, because why I asked about, whether it's at the end of every day and it's like, I did this, because sometimes I feel like if I don't do that, if I don't almost like touch back in with myself, days and weeks and months can just roll on.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of existing and responding to circumstances. Whereas like if I take the time to come back and almost like a moment of reflection.
Yeah.
It's really important
Yeah.
for myself.
And if I'm feeling kind of very negative about something, I kind of often refer back to something and say, what did I go through on this and how did I feel about that? I should actually have a look and see what I felt initially about Outlander.
Exactly, yeah. I think it's really useful. Like, for example, I went through a breakup relatively recently, and since coming out of it have had moments of like nostalgia or feeling really sad about it. But then sometimes it's good to go back to those things and see what you wrote actually in the time, and it's like a good reminder to yourself of how you're actually feeling at the time.
Yeah. And you romanticize something too, don't you? I heard one on the radio this morning who came over from was a refugee on Kindertransport and saying that he was asking what she could remember about it, and not huge details, but she remembered bits and little trivial things, but not the actual overall sensation of it. Apart from the fact that she remembered how wonderfully welcoming the British were back then.
A time in your life where you felt like you really had your shit together.
Now that's an interesting question, because control, like being in, obviously I think I quite enjoy being in control. And I've had success playing a lot of parts about very controlling people. And I'd flirted with directing for ages, and basically it hasn't happened because something else, an acting job has happened or something like that. Anyway, I felt very, very, very empowered by finding this Priestley play, which I then, with a lot of difficulty, managed to get the money together, produce it together, a venue together, and directed it. And
when was this?
2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
And which play?
It was called The Roundabout by J.B. Priestley. And what was empowering apparently was that I realised I felt my shit was so together because I realised how untogether most other actors were.
Wow.
And what's really interesting about directing, I think, is, and I'm talking about the old-fashioned actors-directors who kind of love working with actors, and not about conceptualists who want to have got a big ego big enough to think that they know more than the writer does about the play. But you do a reading of a play, and these little faces all look up at you as if you know the answers.
Yeah.
And that's extremely empowering.
Gosh.
You know?
So interesting.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And the other thing is the good director has to realise that everybody works in a different way. So you have that one needs this, and that one needs that, and that one needs the other thing to get their shit together.
Yeah.
And because it went very well, and it ultimately went to New York, where to something called Brits Off-Broadway, which is a season they do in America. And it was the New York Times Critics' Pick. And it was an extremely empowering, very, very, I felt I'd got my shit together. Yeah. But getting to that point, it was such a challenge to get the thing done on.
Oh my gosh. What would you say is like the biggest difference between directing and acting then, in terms of how do you approach that?
Well, I think it depends what sort of director you are.
Yeah. And
there is the director who thinks, as I say, that their vision is more interesting than what the author had sat down at his desk. And then there is the director who responds to the play and thinks casting is such a huge part of this.
Yeah.
And so cast it very, very carefully in their intuitive sense of what the characters are. And then if it's cast correctly, it's not rocket science. I mean, it's to enable if you've cast it well and you give actors the confidence.
Yeah.
I actually think if you go and see a play where the actors have been allowed to organically find what they're doing, you can sense it in an audience.
Yeah.
Whereas if actors are constrained and made to, you work with directors, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You think, sorry? What are you doing? I don't believe that. And then you think, and you kind of go, and the actor goes, shrivel, shrivel. I can't do this. It sounds corny, but I mean, if you love the actors and cherish them, I mean, we're all actors, are all children, aren't they?
Literally.
And needing mummies and daddies to say they're going to be all right.
Yeah, and like creativity can't thrive in like shame.
No.
Because it needs playfulness.
And actually, that's important too, because I'm always saying to young actors, they're called plays,
Yeah.
And it's about it's playing, and that's why children are such good actors.
Yeah.
Because they don't have all that shit going on, and they have their shit together. And John Bell said more or less the same thing.
Yeah, and we're just trying to get back to who we were as children.
Just imagining, let their imagination be free, without any of the clutter of being grown up.
Yeah. I remember, I think it's when I first got Outlander and we started doing it. And obviously, because you get cast as your character and you go so deep into your own journey through it.
Yeah.
And I remember like going onto set sometimes and a director asking me to do something, I was like, in my head I'd be like, well, that just doesn't make sense to like my journey as this character.
Yeah.
And actually having to remember that like, and trust that the director is like overviewing everything.
Yes.
And you're just a tiny little section of
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And you just have to trust that they can see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
That actors can't because you're so honed in on your own
I mean, going back to what we were saying about Outlander, is that the writers and producers of that see the whole vista.
Exactly.
But you always feel you're the most important. Yeah. I mean, and I apologetically in Series 5 was saying, we call it bystander, because, but actually it's part of the canvas. And and on a big show like that, that's quite a different story.
Yeah. So you felt like you had your shit together directly.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
It must be very validating as well to know that obviously you're not trained as a director.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's just because you've worked with so many different ones that you can kind of sense what is good.
But I also think, and it's heresy to say so, there's an awful lot of mumbo jumbo talked about process.
Yeah.
And the famous story about Laurence Olivier doing a film with Dustin Hoffman. I hope you've heard of both of them.
Yes. Thank you.
And Marathon Man, I think it was, and Olivier was playing a dentist, I think. And Dustin Hoffman was agonising about, where have I been this morning? What have I done? Yeah. And Olivier said, why not just try acting? That's allowing your imagination to actually respond to what you're required to do. And I think you can analyse yourself into a state of paralysis.
Completely.
Yeah, and kind of...
I think I did that at drama school. Like, I think before I went to drama school, I just kind of trusted my instincts and I just connected and empathised. Yeah. But then I think when you're at drama school, it becomes so cerebral.
Yeah.
And that's when I just felt like I completely lost my instinct because I was second guessing everything.
Yeah. I was exactly the same.
Completely. And then coming out of drama school, it's been so much trying to re-find who I was before I went to drama school.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think the thing is that you go to drama school. I mean, I went with, and I'd done lots of big parts at school and at university.
Yeah.
But with no technique, really. It was all absolutely instinct.
Yeah.
And then drama school makes you learn technique, don't you? And you learn how to speak and voice and movement and all that stuff. And then you're going to think to yourself, I listen to John Bell's podcast saying about Ian McKellen not training.
Yeah.
And you actually think to yourself, actually, it's a craft.
That you can learn on the job as well.
But it's like making chairs, it's like being a carpenter.
You just get better.
The more chairs you make, the better carpenter you become. And the more acting parts you play, the better actor you become.
Definitely. And going back to what you were talking about before in terms of like when we get the job and we become a bit intimidated by it, what I've started to think of now, like I'll go to the National or something and see a play and be sat there thinking, God, could I do this? I don't know. But actually I think so much of it is about being given the opportunity to do it.
I know.
And that's what's so frustrating sometimes is that
you're not
the opportunity is blocked.
Quite.
Yeah.
And a lot of your generation are making their own opportunity.
Yeah. Which is what so many people are telling us that we have to do.
Yeah, I know. Making movies and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, the other thing is when you're not working and you go and see a play, you think, my God, how did they do that?
Yeah.
I couldn't do that.
Exactly.
You think
it's
to
so
yourself,
funny.
you know?
But then when you're in it, you find it. Don't you?
Yeah.
And also because you've been given the confidence to play and to try and find it.
Yes.
But that can feel so far away when you're just reading the lines in your room at home.
Yeah, I know. Quite. And depending what you were kind of given in a scene, and how some people are, if you find really good actors to play with. I mean, I did a couple of plays with Fiona Shaw, and acting with Fiona Shaw is very challenging because she's so skilled.
Yeah.
But it's like playing tennis with a champion. You up the game.
That's so interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If somebody throws something completely unexpected, you have to respond in a different way.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. That's exciting.
And what is it that makes her feel like that? What is it that she is doing?
I don't know. Well, I think she's quite a complicated woman, I think. But I think there's part of her, she's got a great brain.
Yeah.
She's got a tremendous intellect.
Yeah.
And great facility. And there's part of her, I think, that thinks acting is really rather ridiculous. Do you know what I mean?
It's like a twinkle in her eye almost.
Yes.
Not taking it too seriously.
So I can let me play with it. You know that.
And you see that in the part she plays, don't you? You see that kind of that impishness.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I know. There's a kind of like she gives the. I don't know how much if she was doing this podcast.
Yeah.
She would claim to have her shit together, but she appears to have her shit absolutely together. Yeah.
I think a lot of the time with acting, it's almost like taking it seriously. I was watching a documentary, a Fatboy Slim documentary.
Oh yeah, you told me how good it was.
He was talking about being a DJ and stuff, and he said something like his motto is something like, "I take my fun very seriously," or like.
Yeah.
I take the fun very seriously. Like, you have to have fun, but you take that seriously.
Yes.
And it's almost the same with acting. Like, you have to find the joy in it, and you have to take it with a lightness.
Yes.
But take it seriously as well, because I think if you get too, like, into the earnestness of it, it becomes bullshitty.
Absolutely. As I say, there's far too much talk nowadays about methodology, about how you do, my character wouldn't do that. But the character, you've playing this character that's written down there that appears to do that, so why wouldn't your character do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so true.
Imagine what that character, that this, you've accepted to play this part. Try to put yourself in that position and try and imagine it. Yeah?
Yeah. Just a little side note, which might be quite funny to say, is the very first time that we met was when you were on the panel of my second round rival audition.
Yeah.
That was the first time that we met.
Yeah.
And thankfully you put me through.
Yeah.
But then, and then we ended up working together.
No, amazing.
Such a small world.
That's really interesting because on the audition panel that what people bring to the audition, and I'm really, really sorry that it's now, the first two rounds are now done, they send in a tape.
Really? Is that how it's done all the time now?
Unfortunately.
Oh, wow.
If you live in Glasgow, of course, that saves you a lot of money.
Yes, yeah.
But on the other hand, being in the room with somebody...
It's so valuable.
I mean, it's like self-tapes, which we all hate. You know, that actually you pick something up from being with a person in the room. That is quite a different sensation. Anyway, various people, they come in and they say... But I've only ever done musical theatre. And apologetically, I think, actually, I had an interlude in my career, which I did 2 musicals in 2 years. And it's very revealing because, my God, they work hard.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
And it was the best warm-ups. I was always keen, and often I think, I don't want to go and do a warm-up. I've been talking all day. And they were such great work because they were so committed.
Yeah.
And a discipline is required. And I've seen fantastically good acting in musicals.
Yeah, oh my God, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
In some of the best.
But people, there's snobbishness about all of that kind of thing. Or else they say, well, I've been to the Actors Temple and I've done 17 courses on the Meissner technique and I've done this and I've done that and the next thing. And then they come and they kind of are not very interesting. And you think, well, actually, you've spent all that money, but in fact, can it be taught? Same as we were saying a minute ago, it's a craft. You can't do it.
Yeah.
You'd be better going and doing a season of plays for no money in a barn somewhere.
Yeah.
And just practicing being an actor, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. A time in your life
where
you
big rant.
I love it. We're going off on tangents. That's my favourite kind of conversation.
Okay, good.
For the people who are
not
still with us.
Not as many jokes as John Bell. Yeah.
Not everyone could be John Bell. Okay, a time in your life where you felt like you really didn't have your shit together.
Well, that thing we brushed on that, and it's all tied up in a funny kind of way with work, isn't it?
I think particularly with being actors or creatives,
Yes.
so much of our worth is just tied up with that.
Yes.
So I think it makes sense.
Yes, I mean, and as I say, it was that part that Henry VIII that came back straight into my mind.
Yeah.
And just feeling, oh God, I wish I wasn't here. But I've got to pretend that I know what I'm doing.
Oh God.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there've been other things like that, but I mean, and some things feel more comfortable than others to do. But I mean, but I think I'm quite good at pretending I've got my shit together, even though I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's why I like playing authoritative figures, because you can hide behind the fact that this layer of this covering up what's going on underneath. I mean, at school when I wasn't keen on, I was in the 5th 15 of rugby, you know what I mean? Way down the pecking order.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they couldn't act. You know what I mean? So, but I mean, I used to feel that's all to do with masculinity and all that kind of thing. But I did this film called An Ungentlemanly Act in the Falkland Islands, which was about the night the Falklands was invaded. And we had military training. And I'd been in the CCF at school, Combined Cadet Force at school.
Yeah.
And that memories of that I'd never had my shit together doing that. And crawling along and pretending to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what I mean?
Still acting, even
Yeah,
then.
yeah, quite. You know what I mean? It kind of,
Yeah.
But no, I didn't have my shit together.
Yeah.
And
Trying to fulfill a role, I guess, that's expected of you.
and that's interesting to do with being vulnerable, being masculinity and having to be manly. And actually, actors need to be manly, but they need to be vulnerable as well. Otherwise, they're not such interesting actors.
They need to have a sensitivity as well.
Quite.
Yeah.
And just, kind of old-fashioned reconstructed alpha males are very boring.
Yeah.
As you've perhaps noticed.
Yes. You know all too well.
Yeah. No, but you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. How was going from Glasgow to London to train?
But the interesting thing about that was that back then in the 60s, Scotland didn't have the same kind of pride it has now. And certainly the culture was that if you wanted to succeed as an actor, not everybody did this, but I certainly felt you go to London.
Yeah. I think that was very much part of what I felt growing up.
Yeah.
You had to go to London to make it happen.
Yeah. And I don't know that that's as important anymore, because, I mean, everything is done electronically. A lot of it's done.
Yeah, but that's very recent.
I know it is.
And the Royal Scottish Conservatoire is a big deal now, isn't it?
No, of
But I
course
guess
it is.
that wasn't there when you were there.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But there was a drama school there, and it was a perfectly good drama. And I went as a little boy to Saturday morning classes there. And I mean, it's always been a good drama school, and it's always turned out good actors.
Yeah, brilliant.
But I mean, now it has a kind of cachet, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The Conservatoire.
Yeah.
And the Welsh College, I think, has a bit of a reputation as being rather good. But then London was kind of Mecca.
And how did it feel being in London as a...
Exciting. I mean, it was the swinging six.
Ooh la la.
Although I wasn't terribly swinging, but it was it was fairly swinging. And it was all happening. I mean, actually, there was a documentary last night about the Beatles and Beatlemania and all that kind of thing. And fashion, suddenly Bieber and all those things happened.
Yeah.
And it was all a bit kind of, people were very relaxed about, people beginning to smoke dope and all that kind of thing. And there was lots of partying going on, and it was very nice. It was
Kind of
fun.
when I think of the...
I've arrived,
Yeah. Or the heydays of London and creativity. It's around that era, and it's Camden and Soho and or the 60s.
Yes, it was interesting. I wasn't sure that I really wanted to learn anymore, that I'd been to university, and I dropped out after 2 years.
Right.
But I really wanted to get into the world. But on the other hand, I look back on it. It's funny, when I look back at it, the sun seems to be shining.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you think of what it was like then and what it's like now.
Yeah.
And how, and I was thinking, when you watch great crowds at a pop concert, you think, are they aware of how, and there's that old age that makes you realise just how perilous the political situation across the world is at the moment, and everything from global warming.
Yeah.
Don't make it too serious.
It does feel doom and gloom now, doesn't it?
I mean, and the kids not feel that.
I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they do. It feels like there's a cultural kind of outcry at the moment for something more or something different.
Yeah.
And yet it's very hard for us to imagine what that looks like at the moment.
But you
it
sort
feels
of,
hopeless.
it sounds ridiculous, but you sort of feel there needs to be a messiah.
Exactly. No, I think that's
There's somebody to appear that is everybody goes, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Listen to the word of the Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, whoever the Lord might be or whatever they might say.
Searching for purpose and meaning.
But I mean, you look up at power figures and they're all so totally corrupt, it seems, that...
There's no hope.
No.
I remember growing up and it was like Tony Blair was in power. And I remember like feeling that sense of, obviously he was very, you know, complicated, but there was that sense of like hope.
Yeah.
And then I literally remember like the Tories getting in and then it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And like from my age of being able to vote, nothing that I have voted for has ever happened.
Yeah.
So there's such like an exhaustion or like a disconnect from feeling like anything that I do
is going to make any difference.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you think Extinction Rebellion and all that kind of... I mean, you know, and all this stuff about putting back the date of carbon zero and all that kind of thing.
Awful.
I know.
But I think that's why there's such like an anxiety around at the moment, and like that married with social media and that consumption constantly being told that everything's going to shit is like a really difficult place to be growing up.
I know.
I really feel for like 16-year-olds.
I know.
Because where is the hope?
I know.
And also because they're aware that by the time that they get to the age where they could have any sway politically, it's probably going to be too late at that point.
Yeah, I know.
Save the planet or anything like that.
I know.
It's terrifying.
Birds and natural things like bees and things and all that kind of thing, shrinking. And nothing happens. I mean, it's just allowed to shrink.
I know.
I mean, there must be people somewhere in the laboratory working out how things can improve.
Yeah.
Mustn't there?
You hope. Or they're planning an escape route to another planet.
I don't. Yes.
Well, on that then, 3 things that make you feel like shit.
Watching Question Time when there are a lot of Tories on.
Yep. Shouting at the TV.
Shouting at the TV and then shouting, that makes me feel like shit.
Yeah.
The gap that's opened up between me and people I'm close to over things like Brexit make me feel like shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, what's happened? Why can't we discuss anything? I won't talk about that.
Yeah.
The fact that you can't discuss.
Healthy discourse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel like shit. And I don't like being told what to do or what to think. That makes me feel like shit sometimes.
Yeah.
Directors that tell that, like the one I was saying to you.
Yeah.
What are you doing? That makes me feel like shit.
Yeah. Shaming. Yeah.
Hey, Ant.
Hey.
You do a great job in editing this podcast, might I say. If people like the podcast, what do they need to do?
Like it.
What else?
Follow it on social media.
And then what?
They could share it with every single person they know.
Thanks, Ant. You can go back to your corner now.
Bye.
In opposition to that, then, 3 things that make you feel like the shit.
Doing something like my production of The Roundabout made me feel great. Making my plants grow.
Tending to them.
Yeah, no, tending to like that yuccas, which is getting so enormous.
Gosh, thriving.
We had one that I got out to the ceiling that we gave to Martha's father. That's very similar. And actually, that's corny.
No, I love that.
And I love, this is really corny, planting bulbs and seeing them start to shoot up.
Yeah.
I love that.
Little life springing
on our
forth.
little back thing there.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's gorgeous.
I went to Lidl the other day and bought my bulbs.
What bulbs?
Tulips, narcissus, and hyacinths. But it's ridiculous, isn't it? But it just...
There's something so beautiful about it.
Isn't there?
There's like a simplicity in it, isn't there?
Yeah. So that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
I love the thing about acting, of putting on something and feeling...
Putting on a costume.
Wow.
But I think that's kind of what John was saying in his episode, wasn't it? That like a great item can almost change his personality.
Yeah.
Putting something on.
Yes, it can.
It's like armour, isn't it?
Well, it's like, if you go out for a job and you think... I always think when I'm going out for a job, how shall I present this?
Yeah.
Having a really good dinner.
Yeah.
I love having a really good dinner.
What's your favourite dinner? As in, like, going out for dinner with people? Or?
Yeah. And this is terrible. You're going to not approve of this at all, but I do love a good roast lunch.
Oh, roast dinner's great.
Yeah?
Little Sunday vibe.
Oh, I think it's fabulous. That makes me feel good.
It does. But I think, because I was thinking about this today, why I love like going out for dinner. And I was like, is it just because I'm like lazy and I don't like cooking? But I think it's the social aspect of it. And like, if I'm cooking at home, I'll eat and like it's more like fuel.
Yeah.
But like being able to go and spend time with someone.
Exactly.
And have a lovely dinner and be really present with the thing that
Exactly.
you're eating and the person that you're in company
Exactly.
with is
Exactly.
so. It's like doing this podcast. It's like you get that nourishment of time spent with someone.
Yeah,
that you care about.
yeah.
It's like the theatre of it. I really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the mundane thing of actually washing the dishes and
Yeah.
making the cup of tea and the toast in the morning thing. I love that sort of thing. And that's another thing that makes me feel
Go on.
good. Being in a hotel. I loved being in the Hotel de Vin in Glasgow.
Oh, stunning.
It was great.
Yeah.
And I loved the breakfast.
Oh, yeah. Little hotel breakfast.
Yeah, breakfast always makes me feel good, no matter where it is. On location breakfast.
Yeah.
I can see those nice people knocking the door. What would you like this morning, you know? No, I love that.
Tattoo scone.
Yeah. All those Scottish things make me feel good.
Yeah.
Like used to have Granny's tomato soup. I wonder if they still have Granny's tomato soup. And there was a sweetie called an Oddfellows, which are kind of cashew things.
Oh.
I'm thinking of all sorts of things. They're all
I
kind
love
of
that. Little joys.
sensual pleasures.
Yeah.
Watching a good film makes me feel good. Watching good acting makes me feel good.
Does it?
Yeah.
That's good. Sometimes I need a break from watching people acting because it's like our business, so I find it hard to switch off. Mm-hmm. Do you find it inspiring?
I can do, but I've always, I go to the theatre a lot because I hope to be inspired.
So that's a nice way to be.
But I'm now cautious about going, I read things and think, what? You've set this in a submarine under the, and, it's Hamlet. Why is it in a submarine? That kind of...
Trying to make it different.
Yes.
Okay, something that makes you lose your shit in a positive and a negative way.
Having a drink.
Having a drink? Is that a positive?
I think, yesterday I thought, oh God, I've got to go and be terribly charming, polite at this party. Mm-hmm. And then I had a couple of beers and they had this bit of cabaret on and it was all a bit silly and I kind of really enjoyed it. And
You were into party mode.
thought I was really glad I'd gone.
Yeah.
And I felt positive about
That's
life.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've lost my shit.
Yeah.
In a negative way. Mm-hmm. Just feeling a day where I've done nothing. Hate it.
Yeah.
And I think, what have you done today? And you can't even remember what you've done today because you haven't done anything much today. And sometimes I feel just, you feel, oh, what am I going to do? What should I do today? Oh, there's the list. I want to do that.
Yeah.
I'll phone somebody. That'll get me going.
Yeah.
And that does help sometimes. You know what I mean? Just talking
some
to somebody.
connection to someone.
Yes.
Yeah. It can be very hard trying to fill your days, can't it?
It can.
Yeah.
How do you find, do you find that your flatmates are stimulating?
The situation that I'm currently in now is I'm living with two of my friends, but they both kind of work 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. And I find...
With straight jobs?
Yeah. And I find that difficult because if I'm in that situation, sometimes it makes me feel like my life is chaotic or wrong. I I should be getting up and doing the 9 to 5 slot. And I've lived with actors before and that normalizes it all because everyone's got quite a transient lifestyle.
Yes.
So if I'm on my own too much, I can start to spiral a little bit and I find it really difficult. Part of the 9 to 5 is, or having any kind of structure like that, is you're responding to a structure that's been laid out before you. Whereas being self-employed so much is like getting up in the morning and being like, oh God, I've got to drag myself through the day and create the structure for myself. And it can be really tiring.
Yes, it can.
And then I get like a dog waiting for my owners to come home in the evening and I'm like, yay, and now I've got energy and they're tired, but I'm like, no, now we can go for a drink or something and like social, but I've lived with Katie for 7 years.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so she's like
I haven't met her, have I?
No, she's like my best friend from home. Mm-hmm. And we moved to London together and she's like my rock.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
And then Layla moved in recently. She's actually been on the podcast and she's great.
What does she do?
She used to work for Equity.
Oh.
She's in between jobs at the moment.
Oh, interesting.
She's currently in the Highlands of Scotland.
Oh, nice.
She's taken herself away.
Oh. And your other friend, your friend from school, what's she do?
So those are the two that I live with now.
Yeah,
but before that, I lived with Nora and Kate, who were both actors.
Okay.
And they've recently moved out. Uh-huh. So I've had a few.
And how are they getting on?
They're doing very well.
Good.
Very well. Nora's rehearsing a play at the Yard at the moment.
Okay.
And Kate's just got BFI go-ahead for a short film that she wrote.
Good.
Brilliant.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So they're getting funding at the moment.
That's
going
good.
to be amazing.
Good.
It's so good to live with other people who are like living a creative lifestyle because I think it reminds you that there is an alternative to the societal expectation of 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Get married, buy a house.
Yeah. But then you meet people, I mean, in the rather auditions again,
Yeah.
I've met people who've had a very good job in the city and 9 to
They've
5.
given it all up.
And I want to be a night time.
There's something more.
Prepared to put up with the indecision and the uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's stimulating.
Sometimes it's great, and sometimes it really bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I think I know that I couldn't do a 9 to 5 office job.
Yeah.
No shade to anyone who can, but I just think that I would go up the walls. I hate it, but I also like not knowing what each day is going to look
Well,
like.
I think there's something about that's
joy
what I
of-
mean about
yeah.
if you were in a soap,
Yeah.
if you were to be in EastEnders for
Yeah.
10 years and just knowing that you had that security. And if you've been in it for 10 years, you must have plenty of money. I mean, that's the other thing. People say, what would you do if you won the lottery? And I think, but if I won £5 million or whatever, no, can you win that much? I'd buy a theatre.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd
Put
put
plays on.
that
Yeah.
I cared about, with people that I cared
Yeah.
about. You know, that's what I'd do.
A moment that you found some shit out about yourself.
I think that I find, and I've got much better, that I used to be a little bit loose with a bit of a gossip. And I've got
Loose
myself
lips
into...
sink ships.
I haven't heard that.
Haven't you?
Loose
I don't know where
lips
that
sink
comes
ships.
from, yeah.
It's a voice exercise. Loose lips sink ships. Must be.
Maybe.
Yeah. Loose lips sink ships. That's true.
Yeah.
And I've got myself into trouble a couple of times through that. And now I'm very, very careful about what I do.
Or you gossip.
No, about important things.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. I think that's great. I think I might have to write it down.
Loose lip sync ships.
Yeah.
I'll text it you. Shittest piece of advice you received.
Vote leave.
I think, yes, we can all agree.
Yeah, no,
Well,
that's
some
not,
of us.
that's not really what you wanted to know. But that was a very shitty piece
Yeah,
of advice.
awful.
It was very complicated. He'd probably be in jail now. The director at RADA, gave me a lot of pressure and obviously a lot of insinuation, sexual insinuation.
Right.
What wanted to do. Anyway, he wore extremely tight trousers. I remember saying to me, and he was a tyrant, and he was a terrible. You know, I was doing a restoration play, and you had to. And it was all very technical, and it was a dressing scene.
Yeah.
And he was doing my head in, saying, "No, on that line you do pick up that, and you do this," and I couldn't do any of it. And there was a wonderful woman at RADA, a teacher called Toszka Fedra, who's Polish. Darling, I think I know what's your problem. You come to my house on Sunday, we sort it out. Okay?
Oh.
And she was brilliant.
Yeah.
We did indeed sort it out. But he said to me, "The trouble with you, Hugh," he said, "you've got the talent, but not the temperament." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well," he said, "it's a tough business." And he said, "You know, if you're going to give in when somebody's giving you a hard time, that's no good." Because I obviously had appeared very vulnerable to him. And I think you have to, it's the balance between being tough and determined and also being vulnerable, and actually that you could, you know,
human.
and the other thing is, the other piece of advice I always give people is that because of this nature of the business, the most important thing to avoid is bitterness and thinking, I mean, I just don't understand why I can't get into blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And complaining. They say the collective noun for a group of actors is a complaint of actors. You know?
It's very true.
Why is she getting more money than me?
Yeah. And it's so easy to get swept away in that as well.
I know.
Slightly off peak, but just before we started the podcast, you were talking about David, your partner, who is an artist.
Yes.
Who is preparing for a show at the moment.
Yes.
He's on his way home now.
Yes.
But because you showed me a painting that he did, which is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But how he's feeling a bit about it.
Yeah.
And we were saying about how as artists generally we're so bad at judging our own ability.
I know. And I mean, a lot of people, they have to be dead before they're appreciated.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, absolute crackers.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Why? What is it about the personality that does that? The same thing that makes you want to be somebody else or do something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Mark Twain said, "When you remember that the world is mad, the mysteries are solved and life stands explained."
Wow. I like that.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah. You just got to kind of give into it.
Yeah. There's everything is mad.
And nothing makes sense.
Yeah, no, quite.
Yeah, and you can wreck yourself trying to understand.
David
everything.
was a singer for a while, and one of his songs is trying to make some sense of your life.
David?
Yes.
I didn't know that he was a singer.
Yeah, I mean, if he wasn't coming back, we just found the CD the other day.
Oh my gosh, well, let's wrap up so I can...
Yeah, no, I mean, and actually I think they're rather good.
Yeah.
But,
multifaceted.
Yeah, I know. But,
Yeah.
I mean, hypersensitive.
Yeah.
Sensitivity comes at an awful price.
Yeah. It's the empath, isn't it? It costs
Yes,
us
I know.
a lot.
I know.
Shit you wish you'd known sooner.
That sometimes being optimistic isn't enough. Shit happens.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known sooner that when I remembered that the world was mad. I mean, I think when you're young, you think there is an explanation for things. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that things can be solved?
That there's a hopeful optimism.
Yeah.
I was telling you that I went to a comedy show last night. It was all female comedy, and there was this. The headliner was this person called Sarah Barron, I think she's called. If not, I will correct it.
Yeah.
But she did this bit about being on a bus as a 44-year-old, and normally she would like listen to music, but like her battery had died. And when you're 44 and on a bus, that is a terrible time to be with your thoughts. Mm-hmm. And she's basically saying, because when you're like 30 or below 30 and you have your thoughts, there is still like an optimism of like, I'm going to like daydream about, I wonder like what my career is going to be. Or I wonder who I'm going to marry. Or I wonder this, or I wonder this. And you can kind of get away with doing that. But she was like, when you're 44 and you know all the answers.
Yeah.
Like the hope isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, fucking hell, like that's so bleak. But I can also imagine that's true.
But again, so going back to the woman I'm talking about kinder transport on the radio this morning, she was saying that she was 80, she was 90, I beg your pardon, still working, and she believed in the human race, and she believed in goodness.
Yes.
And I think that's the most important thing, that without sounding too naff about it, that there is ultimately, I mean, like I was saying, that you think there must be a Messiah.
Yeah.
I sort of, there is hope in me that these bad people can't possibly, but I mean, it looks like they can, but...
Well, I think a lot of people are hoping that this is like the final reckoning of like...
This lot.
Yeah, maybe. I interviewed a guy called Jack the other day, and he was saying that like with social media, you can convince yourself that there's like no hope and that everything's awful. And actually, if you just like turn your phone off and you just go down to like the local pub or cafe and you sit and you talk to people and you connect in the real world, that's where you find your hope, because you are reminded that not everyone is like that online.
Yeah.
You are the eldest person that I've had on this podcast so far.
Gosh, yes.
An honour, a privilege. You know, if you were talking to yourself, if I was you when you were 28, what would you be saying to yourself?
Keep at it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I fundamentally am an optimist.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I mean, forgive me for dropping it, but I was talking to Ian McKellen just recently. It was actually very interesting. Did I mention this to you? There was a kind of poet, spoken word person.
Oh, you did? Yeah. You sent me the link.
Yeah, and he was really extraordinary. But Ian was saying, it was quite interesting, because there was Ian, and it was me, then Ian, then Richard Wilson, and they're both a few years older than me. But Ian was saying, I think I'm addicted to work. You know, I'm addicted to working. I just seem to need to do it. And it, my God, it's made him I mean, the energy of the man is brilliant. And it's being positive.
But it keeps you youthful as well.
It does, it really does.
And curious, I think, being an actor.
And the good thing about acting is that you work with younger people, and you know, but
of course. You can make such beautiful friendships.
Yes.
Intergenerational.
No, it's good.
Yeah, it is.
It's really good.
It keeps your spirit younger.
Yeah. It does. And
and connected to like what different generations' plights are.
Yes, quite.
Yeah.
Quite. It's a bit gloomy sometimes, because a lot of people get very ill and all that kind of thing as you get older and die. There's a wonderful woman, she's a designer, she designed wonderful wallpaper and clothes and things at this party yesterday, and she was saying, those two talk about death all the time. She said, I hate it. Talk about the deaths all the time. She said, I can't stand it. And you sort of think, no, it's not a very good idea.
No.
Really.
Before the podcast, I asked you to think of a shit shot. Now that's a photo that to the outside eye looks like you had your shit together.
Yes.
But at the actual time, you definitely didn't. Can you think of one?
Yeah, I looked at my photographs. I thought, did I have
Cast
one?
back.
Yeah, but I did this scene in Trainspotting, and I had a terrible night. It was one scene, two scenes actually, one of which was cut from the final. But I slept very badly, and I was shitting myself. And people say to me, "I love that little scene you had in Trainspotting," and actually, I hadn't a clue what I was doing.
Oh my gosh. And that's such an iconic film as well.
I know, and actually, I was really shitting myself.
So that's a photo of you sat at a table. What character were you playing?
I was playing an interviewer about the two Spud and what's his name wanting jobs.
Yes, yeah. I went to see Trainspotting live in Edinburgh recently.
Oh, right, okay.
It was brilliant. And they had those characters in it.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
And I woke up and I thought, I don't know, I can't do this. I don't know. And it was fine.
Do you remember at the time thinking that this was going to be a huge film? No.
Didn't. No idea.
Yeah.
No idea. One of the, see, here's a nice thing that came out of that. And then about how nice a lot of actors are, that 10, 15 years even later, I was in the Soho House and my goddaughter married somebody very well known. And it was a very posh wedding. There were lots of very distinguished actors there. Yeah. And Ewan McGregor was there. And he said, "Oh, hello." And I said, "I'm sure you don't remember me." And he said, "Hugh, of course I remember you." I thought, that's classy.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
You know what I mean? That really is classy.
Yeah, of course.
He's a nice man.
Yeah. So, Hugh Ross.
This is your life.
Have you got your shit together?
By and large.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
By and large, not too bad.
Do you feel like you're a bit more on top of it?
Yeah. I feel I've got quite a good sense of my own worth. Yeah.
Is that something you've come to more recently?
Yes, I think so. I mean, but then you worry about that in a sort of funny way, because you think, you go and see somebody who's terribly successful, you think, they're not very good. But then you think to yourself, but they must presumably think they're very good.
Yeah.
But then, of course, as you say, it's all terribly subjective.
It's subjective, but I think Julia Cameron talks about it in The Artist's Way.
Oh, yes.
And she said half of it is the ability and the talent, and half of it is like the audacity.
Yes.
And actually, like, audacity will get you far in this industry, in life.
Yeah.
Like, God, look at so many people at the top of things and they've had the audacity to put themselves there. So, to end, we all need more audacity.
Yeah, I do, yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
No,
I'm so glad we made it happen.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, have
It was
you?
okay, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I was worried it wasn't